Like I said, today we are talking about COVID-19. We are talking about how to deal with event cancellation requests. So the first thing I want you to think about as event professionals, no matter what your profession is, I hope that you have taken steps to be proactive. One of the things that I did very quickly when I started to read the news and I started to get information about what was happening and what this could likely turn into is pick up the phone. Okay, so I picked up the phone and I spoke to every single one of my clients who had made any investment in their event, or even, our students as well, because we have a class that's supposed to be kicking off this month. Okay, an in-person class. So apart from the online wedding planning course, we also have the signature event planning and design course, which is an in-person course. And so what it meant for us was that we would have about 10 students in our class. And of course, it raised, concerns. Even before the lockdown was announced, even before Ghana's situation got, a little bit slightly out of hand. So I want you to think about this right now. If you have any events that are between now and the end of May booked with you, and you haven't had the client reach out to you yet, please pick up your phone. There's a reason why I am not saying just send them an email. I didn't just send an email because I believe that an email is so impersonal. Like in a situation like this, you not just want to make announcements, you also want to find out how your clients are doing. Like genuinely, how are they doing? Because as an example, if you have a bride whose wedding is scheduled for this month, next month, God knows what they're going through right now. They're going to be really concerned about what all of this means for their event. And I can just imagine, weddings are stressful already. So I can just imagine what the emotional roller coaster is for them right now. So pick up the phone, show genuine concern for your client. It's not just about you guys. It's not just about you. It's not just about your business. If you've been in business for a while, you know that your clients pretty much determine how your business landscape is. So pick up the phone, find out how they're doing, take proactive steps. Okay, so one of the opportunities that I've given my clients is we had an event, we've had 3 events that have been postponed. And the opportunity that I gave my clients was the opportunity to be able to postpone their weddings within a 6-month bracket without any further charges. So whatever they paid us, it doesn't matter. Everything is on pause now. The world is on pause now. So give them the opportunity first so that they're not panicking. Reassure your brides, reassure your clients. The corporate events that we have, for corporate events, even it's not as crazy as for weddings, right? Because it's not just, we work for global organizations, and for global organizations, they already, have taken the steps, like the steps are in place already. It's not like the one bride who's on her own, or perhaps the bride and the groom who are on their own. For global organizations, it's a little bit different, but still, the events have been postponed. And so be the front, be the first person to take action. The second thing, and that leads me to my second point, is lead with empathy and compassion. So if your bride has reached out to you first to say, look, with all of this that's happening, I want to cancel my event, then you want to get to understand what the concern is first. Hear them out first. So instead of saying, okay, fine, if you want to cancel your event, well, you're going to lose all of your non-refundable deposits and retainers that you paid. Instead of saying that, hear them out first. Hear them out, let them, explain what they're going through, encourage them to share their feelings and emotions, and then offer solutions. Guys, we are event planners. I mean, the majority of you on this webinar are event planners. And our job is to be the front line of taking away all of this stress from our brides, from our grooms, from our clients. That's what we do for a living. Our job is to take away all of the wahala. So whatever wahala your client is facing right now, this is your opportunity to shine as a professional. So hear them out first and say, hey, listen, I understand how you feel right now. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what you're going through right now. And I can see why you're concerned. And I can see why you're worried. And I can see why you feel a need to cancel the event. However, my recommendation for this is, I know that we don't know what's going to happen in the next month. And so I have made provision for all of my brides to be able to, this is the conversation you're having with your client, by the way. So I have made provision for all of my brides to be able to postpone their event and choose a date over the next 6 months that our business is also available so that we can continue to serve you. Right? Now, if they want to choose a date and they insist on a date that you're not available, my recommendation also will be, if you really can't refund them the money, then offer it as a credit for future opportunities to work with you. Okay? So offer it as a credit. So you can give it maybe 12 months, 18 months for them to come back to you with any parties that they have in mind and to use that non-refundable deposit as credit towards a different event. Okay? The third thing I want to talk about is this. Choose people over cash. I know that the first thing you want to do is to hold on to any non-refundable deposits and to, fight a battle. It's unnecessary. Always choose people over cash where possible. I also understand that your business is, getting a bit of a hit and a bit of a fall. I mean, I am an event planner as well. Our business is on halt right now, literally. Okay? Our offices are closed because the government says it is necessary. And we see it is necessary. We want our staff to be safe. We want everybody to stay healthy. And so the best way is to encourage them to stay at home. Okay? Now, for those employees who can't even work from home, still, we're giving them the opportunity to because it's necessary. And so I can understand and I can empathize and I can see how right now your own emotions as an event planner are on, are a bag of live wires. I can totally see that. I can totally feel it myself because I am in your shoes. But always choose people over cash. This is an opportunity for you to shine as a professional, as the professional that you are, and people will remember you for this. So number one, be proactive, take the first step. If your client hasn't reached out to you yet to cancel an event, reach out to them first. What that does is that it puts a human face to your business. Instead of them just sending you an email and say, hey, cancel, you picking up the phone to call them wherever they are in the world automatically puts a human face to your business and makes them equally empathize with you. Number two, lead with empathy and compassion. Number three, choose people over cash. Okay, so these are the 3 points that I want you to ponder over. And right now, what I want to do is I want to invite Pamela Agbesi. She's going to share some pointers and some key considerations for your contracts moving forward. So Pamela, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Can everyone hear Pamela? Let me know in the comment section if you can hear Pamela. Can you type in a yes? Type in a yes if you can hear Pamela. Type in yes, yes, yes. Excellent. Okay, so everyone can hear Pamela. Some of you probably even know her because she, I mean, why don't you know Pamela? So I want to invite you to tell us, I mean, you're a lawyer and you know what the legal
called to the bar.
You've been called to the bar.
No, yet to be called to the bar.
Yet to be called to the bar. Okay, so you're yet to be called to the bar. However, I find that the suggestions and recommendations that you have are relevant because for everyone else, I'm assuming that everyone else on this webinar hasn't studied law yet. And so whatever advice that you give us that you learned from your seniors, we will take seriously and also, you know, consult our lawyers as well so that offer their recommendations. So tell us about some of the things that we should consider.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's nice to have you all here, and I hope everyone can hear me. So I hope you're all staying safe as well. So what I would like us to look at is looking at the way forward with our contracts as event planners or vendors, service providers going forward. After this experience, I believe that everyone would have learned something or another, one thing or the other in the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. Your business may have suffered one problem or the other. So you'll be looking forward to making certain adjustments to your service contracts going forward. Before I begin, I would just like to explain something that's discharge of a contract. So I'll try to make it as simple as possible so that we don't become too technical or it doesn't get too technical for you. And if you have any questions as well, you could just type them in and then try to answer them as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So discharge of a contract basically means bringing a contract to an end. And it's usually done in 4 ways. So the first 3 are not very important for the purpose of this discussion. So I'll just list them and then I'll explain the last one. The first one is by performance. So by performance means that both parties or all parties to the contract have performed their duties under the contract, and then we can bring the contract to an end. The second one is by breach, where one party or one or more parties breach certain portions of the contract. That will be handled by the law courts. The third one is by agreement, where parties to the contract decide that will no longer be able to go ahead with this. So why don't we bring everything to an end, and then the contract is brought to an end and no one is liable for anything anymore. Now the last one is by frustration, like if you're frustrated. So a contract is said to be frustrated when events that happen are beyond the control of the parties to the contract. But then again, those events will hinder the parties from performing their duties under the contract. So for instance, in this season, if you are an event person, you realize that if you have any events between now and till the time that the ban on public gatherings are lifted, you'll be unable to host your event because there's a ban and you will not want to be going against public policy or things that have been introduced by the government, measures to protect the public. So that's a typical example of the contracts being frustrated, because per your contract, you might be expected to host an event on so and so date for Mr. A or Mr. B, and now you will not be able to do that anymore. So that's what frustration of a contract basically means. So when you're putting your future contracts together, now the things that you should consider, the first one is you should consider any possible thing or any possible factor that could frustrate the contract and make provision for it in the contract. So that's where you can look at things like acts of God, like if there's a flood, an earthquake, or you look at things like pandemics, anything that is beyond your control or that of your client that will prevent you from performing your duties under the contract. That's what is factors that can frustrate the contract. And then number 3, you also have to consider your business structure. So you would all agree with me that no two business structures are really the same. The way you offer your services might be different from how I offer mine, or the type of services and products that you offer will be different from mine. Even your mode of operation might be different from mine. So when you're trying to put together a contract for your business, you need to take into consideration how your business is structured and tailor a contract to suit that particular kind of structure. So it just simply means that you cannot take Auntie Gloria's contract and try to copy it verbatim for it to work for you. You realize that it will not be fit for purpose. So that's just that thing that you should take into consideration when you're putting your contract together. Now, number 4 is you should apply resolutions or introduce resolutions as a first step when the contract does not cover for a particular prevailing situations. So, for instance, maybe in your previous contract, you never expected that we could be even having this COVID-19 pandemic at this time. So you wouldn't have provided for things like pandemics. Maybe you provide for acts of God, but then not a pandemic because it's not something that you have foreseen. However, you should include in your contract that if any situation, anything happens to frustrate your contract, which has not been clearly provided for in the contract, you would expect that the client will avail themselves for you to resolve instead of taking any legal action against each other. So like what Auntie Gloria said earlier on, that you should be proactive and reach out to the client, and that's just a way of resolving issues, finding the way forward. That is if your contract already doesn't have provisions for this kind of events. So we'll go to number 5. You make provision for date changes. Like she said earlier on, you make provisions that clients will be able to change their dates under certain circumstances that's pertaining to how you want to run your business. So, for instance, in this situation, there's a pandemic, and Auntie Gloria is allowing people to change their dates, giving them a 6-month gap to be able to change their dates. Maybe you want to give a 1 year. Maybe you want to give 8 months. All depends on what you're doing and what you think you can accommodate. And then what you should take into consideration when you're making provisions for these changes is that you should consider if there will be any extra charges or any extra costs that will be paid if you accommodate a new date. But it all depends on the type of business you're running or the type of service you are providing. So for instance, Auntie Gloria mentioned that she would allow clients to change their dates without any extra charges. Maybe you're running a catering business and the event was next week. You've already made some purchases, bought ingredients, and now you're not going to be able to use them. So you will not be able to run that kind of arrangement where there will be no extra cost. Maybe another person happens to have been delivering items to the event grounds. And so for them, maybe they've already brought the things and now they have to come and take them back and bring them on the new agreed date. So in that situation too, the client may have to bear the cost for the extra charges for transportation. So it would all depend on the kind of business you're running or you're operating and the structure of the business. But you have to ensure that if there'll be any extra charges for changes in dates, you include it or you make the clients aware so that you don't take them unawares. And also you provide alternatives for them when the new date they are choosing doesn't favor you. I think that was mentioned by Auntie Gloria earlier on. So you let them know in your contract, if you run the type of business that the client is changing the date and you are not available, you would rather bring on another vendor to take on the job. You should state it in your contract that if we are unable to render this service, we would find an alternative, someone to do or render the service on our behalf. So it should be in your contract so that you don't wake up one day and say, oh, we'll not be able to do this, or the date you're choosing, we can't work with it. So we are still not going to refund your money. However, we'll let Mrs. X or Madam X come and take the job. And that will bring conflict between you and the client because they are not aware that that is possible. What they'll be expecting is that once you can render the service, you give me back my money. So number 6. Did you have any questions so far? Let me just check.
No, I think it will be a good idea to finish. Once you're done, we can welcome questions. So guys, if you have any questions while she's giving you her recommendations and suggestions, please have them ready so that as soon as she's done, we can, fire out questions.
Okay.
Pamela.
Number 6. So you introduce a provision for legally unenforceable or enforceable provisions in the contract. What this simply means is that sometimes you may have a contract that expects you, that requires of you to provide a number of services or perform a number of duties, and then at a certain point, one or more of those duties may become legally unenforceable. For instance, using the COVID-19 pandemic as an example, we are in an era where you can't hold public gatherings, or maybe from Monday you will not be able to go out, there's a lockdown. So assuming in your contract, you're supposed to take the clients, so I'm using the event planners as an example, you're supposed to take the clients for a trial or a fitting on their dress, and you are not able to do that. Does it mean that once you're not able to do that, the whole contract is null and void, or the client has to cancel? No. So you should include a clause in your contract that protects you from situations like that, that if a portion of the contract becomes legally unenforceable at a certain point, it doesn't cancel out the whole contract. All the other parts are valid. So a typical wording of such a clause would be, and I quote, "If any provision of this agreement is held to be unenforceable under the law, the validity of this agreement as a whole shall not be affected, as all other portions or provisions shall remain in full force." So you put in something like that, so that at any point you are unable to perform any of the roles due to legal unenforceability, then you're protected. You can go ahead and do the rest, probably schedule to do that particular thing at another time. So number 7, finally, and most importantly, is that you should include a force majeure clause into your contract. So I would like to explain to you what a force majeure clause is. It is a clause that excuses you from performing a contract or portions of a contract or delaying its performance. And a force majeure situation is one which could not be reasonably foreseen by the parties to a contract. Like I said earlier on, that a factor that frustrates a contract is typically a force majeure situation. So usually when you include a clause, the law would allow you to fall back on that clause if there is any force majeure situation, meaning that once you are including the force majeure, you should make sure that you're very express and clear on what you're doing, because if you have any issues or any situation that requires that you fall back on the clause, the law is going to expect you to fully rely on the clause. Assuming you didn't have a clause, the law has other doctrines which they'll use to determine whether the force majeure is legit or you can fall on it or not. Those ones are usually determined in court, and that is why it's advisable to include the force majeure, because I would like to believe that no one wants to be in court with their client about something that they would ideally have been able to resolve just between themselves. So that makes the force majeure very important for us as service providers. And so you should include any likely events that would constitute a force majeure in your particular position or your particular situation as a vendor or a service provider, and define it very clearly. Don't leave room for ambiguity, or don't leave open-end statement that does not really describe what you are talking about, because then that would leave a lot of room for future litigations. So usually with force majeure clauses, they would not excuse the entire performance of the contract, but then they would give a period that the unforeseen circumstances prevail, and after that you are still expected to perform your duties. So that means as a vendor or a service provider, you shouldn't be hiding behind the force majeure clause or using it as an excuse to dodge your responsibilities under any contract. Rather, it is just to help you or to be something to fall back on when an extremely difficult situation arises or an unforeseeable situation, a superseding event that would not make you be able to perform your duties under the contract. So finally, I also like us to look at what to consider when including a force majeure clause. Because it is a really important aspect of the contract, you need to pay a lot of attention to it. So the first thing that we would like to consider is you should know that usually when clients take a contract and you see the force majeure, is sometimes an uncomfortable or a source of discomfort for people, because now they are thinking, oh, okay, so this thing can happen, or this thing can happen in the person would not render the service and I'll still not be able to get my money back. And in lieu of that, we should be very careful and very clear so that we don't create too much discomfort for the other contracting party. So we should avoid ambiguity as much as possible, like I said earlier. And then another thing is we should know that force majeure clauses are not standardized. So you cannot pick the force majeure clause in my contract and use it for your particular business. It might not be fit for purpose. So you have to create your force majeure situations, the likely situations that you think can prevent you from rendering the service or performing your duties under the contract. Now, you should define the force majeure under every contractual situation. So if in this case you are looking at acts of God, you are looking at pandemics, you are looking at the sickness or death of the service provider, that is if the business is run by one person, or you should clearly define them and also state who is going to bear the risk under that circumstance. So in this situation, you have to state in your contract if such a risk occurs, who is going to bear the risk, or which group of people are going to bear the risk in this situation, and in what proportions are they going to bear the risk. So I would like to believe you wouldn't like to put all the responsibility on your client once something goes wrong. Also, as a business owner, you wouldn't want to keep all the responsibility on yourself, that once something happens beyond my control, like we all don't have control over the situation, you wouldn't want to entirely take responsibility for everything, because that could also lead to a lot of losses. So you need to clearly explain who is bearing the risk and in what proportions. And also you should look at what the consequences of that force majeure situation would be. So if there's a pandemic, what would happen? Are we going to refund you fully? Are we going to give you a portion of the money and all of that? You need to state them in your contract. What will be the course of action if this happens or if that happens? And also there's something else you need to look at is sometimes after a force majeure situation, maybe you were supposed to do this or perform this duty on the 6th of March. Now you are unable to do so. So are you still expecting that the client should pay you? Maybe you have a payment plan. Do you still want them to pay you when the time is up? So in your clause, you need to state to what extent that you as a contractor or as a vendor or a service provider will continue to be paid even when you are unable to complete your obligations. What portions of the money, maybe every month the client is supposed to give you 1,000 cedis. Are you still expecting that because I can't do X, Y, Z in the contract, they shouldn't pay anything at all? Should they still continue paying so that I would provide a service at a later time, or I would fulfill my obligations at a later time? You need to state that also in the contract or under the force majeure clause. And then in case of a delayed force majeure situation or an extended one, so let's say in the case of the COVID-19 pandemic, you're expecting that, by May, everything will be over. People can start having their weddings in June, July, and that kind of thing. What happens if after September, we're still on lockdown? So you need to state in the contract, in the case of a delayed force majeure situation, should there be a termination? If yes, at what point? So after how many months, or how much delay, or what kind of extension should call for a termination of the contract? And when that happens, what is the course of action? What will happen when the contract is terminated? Is the client losing all the money they've paid? What portions are they getting back? So all of that is very important. And finally, or last but not the least, you should remember to always act in good faith and in fair dealing. basically, this just means that you should, any decision you are taking, or any term, any clause you're putting under your contract, you should always ensure that you're not only having your own interest at heart, so that it doesn't become an unfair contract. You should ensure that whatever you're doing is balanced. As much as your interest is being taken into consideration, that of the client is also being considered. So it doesn't become a one-sided contract which just goes ahead to favor the event planner or the service provider. And at the end of the day, it's best to ensure that you have a lawyer or someone who is in the legal profession read through your contract and then advise you, because sometimes contracts can become illegal. You can put certain things down and then you get to court and you're told that this thing you put here, it renders the contract null and void. So you have to have someone look over it. But when you're doing that, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of event people, when a lawyer looks over your contract, if you do not explain your services into details, make them understand where you're coming from, the kind of things that can happen in your line of business, they will just end up giving you a standard contract, something that will not fully cater for your needs as a service provider, especially in the event industry. So you need to let the person understand what you do and how you offer your service, what is your mode of operation, so that they can put together a contract that best fits what you're doing. So basically, these are some of the things, or some of the important things that you should look or consider when you are putting together a contract going forward, based on the experience that we've all gathered in this season. I think I'm done, and I would just like to look at the questions that you have.
Pamela, thank you so much. I think I want to give a bit more clarity to this. I want to read out a clause in our contract, okay? Just for everyone to be able to understand and be able to apply all of the legal terminologies that she said to real life. Okay, so as an example, in our contract, and guys, if you've already signed up for the wedding planning course, don't worry, I've got you. Your girl's got you, okay? So if you signed up for the wedding planning course, you will receive a full drawn out contract. Now, this contract is obviously yours to use, but what I will encourage you to do is when you do receive this contract, also ask that a lawyer looks at it, like Pamela recommended earlier. Make sure that you have a lawyer who understands your business also review the contract that we send you. You will receive downloadable templates for contracts for your clients and contracts for your vendors. I think that one of the things that we often overlook here in Ghana especially is having a contract not just for your client, but also having a contract for your vendors. So if you recommend a third-party vendor, what are your liabilities in that recommendation? Are you liable if the vendor is unable to perform their duties going forward? You have to think about that as well. I saw a question on the platform. Let me just find that question quickly, Pamela, so that you can offer your thoughts on this. So Nana is asking, what happens if a client gives you the "I'm busy to meet you to sign a contract" thing, but then go ahead to pay money into your account and then later on come to cancel with no excuse? Well, you don't have a contract with them, so then what happens? Do you just refund the money to them, or what do you do?
Okay, so sometimes it depends on how your contract.
Sorry, Pamela, I actually have a clause in the contract that covers that, but yeah. I'll hear your thoughts on that first.
Okay, so sometimes depending on how you structured your contract, you can put in a clause like Auntie Blair was saying, that either by signing the contract or by paying a deposit or the initial deposit as agreed, it means that you have an agreement with the person. So it's just a simple issue of offer and acceptance. You've offered to render X and X service at price X, and once the client accepts, it means they've paid the initial deposit or they've given you your non-refundable deposits, your retainer, then it means they've agreed to the terms of the contract. That's once they've been privy to the contract, they've seen it, they've acknowledged that they've gone through, they've read it, and the only thing that is left hanging is they are unable to meet you to sign it. So you should include a clause that covers that you're either involved or you're either agreeing to this contract by depositing this amount into the business account, or by paying this retainer fee, or by signing the contract, or by doing both. Once you do that, it's sorted. So it doesn't matter if they've not been able to come and sign the contract. They've agreed by paying you your retainer.
Yeah. So there's a specific clause in our contract which literally says what you've just said, Pamela, that if you go ahead and you make any payments, actually, let me read out that clause. I think that for those of us who have stayed on till now, you deserve to know what's in there covering that question. Okay, so the clause in our contract, and you're getting this contract as well if you're on the course, so I wouldn't worry too much about trying to write it down. But the clause says the client will be deemed to have accepted this letter for the engagement of Planet Ghana's event planning services by issuing payment of the required deposit amount within 5 working days of the payment due date indicated on the attached invoice. So this means that if you go ahead and you make a deposit to our account, it's legally binding. Literally. So whether you physically sign a contract or you don't physically sign a contract, you sign it digitally, however way you do it. And I have to say as well, Nana, I think that now it is quite clear that we live in a digital age. So what I will recommend to you is sign up for a client management system. A client management system allows your clients to sign contracts digitally. So if they go ahead and they click, I have read and understood the terms of offer, then that's giving you permission, or that's saying that's as legally binding as if they signed your contract. Okay, so allow them to digitally sign your contract as well, so that, like Pamela is recommending, you're covered both ways. They pay money into your account, you're covered. They digitally sign your contract, you're still covered. But needless to say, still ask your lawyer what their recommendations are as well pertaining that, and then include a clause in your contract to reflect that. Okay. Okay, so if we don't have any, hang on, let me see if we have any other questions. Gladys says, sorry, I joined late. Will the notes be available online? Gladys, I will do my very best. I can't promise that I can do a replay of this one, but I will do my best if it's possible. Nana, you're very welcome. So 4 key considerations that I want you to think about going forward, guys. Number 1, when you're drawing up your contract, number 1, think about your client. Like Pamela said, make sure that it's a client that favors not just yourself, but also favors your client. The contract, sorry. Make sure that your contract favors all parties involved, okay? The second person you want to think about is the vendor. For some of us, I mean, there are 2 ways. Event planners manage finances in 2 different ways. Some event planners allow their clients to go ahead and pay directly to the vendor and then have a binding contract between themselves and the vendor. Some event planners also allow the client to pay the money to them directly and then disburse. Now, if you're allowing your client to pay money to you and then disbursing to your vendors, please make sure you have a binding contract between yourself and your vendor, not just whatever they send you. Make sure that you write a contract for each of your vendors, depending on what their business structure is. So if it's a caterer, make sure you have a contract for that caterer. If it's a photographer, you have a contract for them. If you don't want any of that wahala, then you know what? Just have a contract for your event planning services and ask the client to pay the vendor directly, so that all of the liability is between them and the vendor. But obviously, as an event planner, you still want to make sure that you review every single contract that the client signs with a vendor. because although they are third-party vendors or they're offering third-party services, if anything goes wrong, it still comes back to you. If the client is unhappy, you failed. So you still have to ensure that you review every single contract that the client signs with any vendor directly. Okay. Number 3, you have to carefully read the venue contracts that you sign. So if you're signing contracts on behalf of your clients at hotels, resorts, whatever venue, make sure that you take your time to read that venue contract. Okay, with an open eye, seeing as all that's happening right now, make sure that you take your time to read that contract well before you go ahead and represent your client. Okay, or include a clause that allows the client to also review the venue contract and then give you the go ahead if you feel you're not, in the capacity to represent them. And number 4, obviously, think about your business as well. Okay, I know that I have mentioned that we have to be, lead with empathy and compassion, but sometimes the reality of it is that you may struggle in a situation like this where the client is canceling at the last minute. So try to be proactive. Try to take the initial step before the client calls you. You call them so that you give a human face to your business, and hopefully they will empathize with you as well. Guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. Pamela, you have been an absolute gem. And I mean, some of the things that you've shared on there even have given me, reason to think carefully about what I am sending out in my contract, and, a reason to review some of the clauses in my contract. So thank you, Pamela. Thank you so much.
And so much also for inviting me on, and thank you everybody for joining to listen as well.
No, you have been amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And guys, as always, thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Have a good one, guys. Stay safe, take the precautionary measures, and keep well. Bye-bye.